Joel Harden joins us now. Mr. Harden, thanks for being here.
Hi, Michael. Nice to be here.
So we're going to talk about the inquiry in a moment, but before we get there, I was wondering if you could begin with the kind of behavior associated with the protest that was concerning, because Ottawa Centre is your community. Of the behavior that you saw, what concerned you the most?
Well, I just feel as if it was a climate where people were dehumanizing each other. I saw the convoy protest roll across the country, Michael, and arrive here. Absolutely bound and determined to teach Prime Minister Trudeau a lesson, I guess, to make their point, and people are allowed to protest. But when you have the degree of folks intending to not only protest, but occupy our downtown, prevent people from getting around, prevent people from working, that created a climate of chaos, and not the kind of chaos that's associated with spontaneous protest. It made people legitimately fearful for their livelihoods. Many people lost pay. Many people felt harassed in their own neighborhoods. Even if that wasn't the intent of many of the protesters, that's how people lived here felt.
Let's pick up on that point, because at the time I was covering the story from an anchor desk in Toronto, and the stories I was hearing at the time talked about people being verbally harassed, some being subjected to sexist, misogynistic commentary. What did you hear from local residents, from people who who live in Centretown in Ottawa?
It was hard to keep up, Michael, honestly. The level of correspondence we were getting into our office by email and by phone, incidents, it was hard to keep up. And I think, essentially, we had gone through 2 years of a pandemic with serious sacrifices on behalf of many. And some of the folks who traveled across the country here were determined to make a point. And anytime they saw someone wearing a mask, that person was seen as the enemy instead of a fellow Canadian. And that led to so many significant incidents of harassment. I also heard of many incidents of racism, folks who are not cisgendered like me, who are transgender, who are queer visibly, feeling like they couldn't walk safely to the gym, to their place of work in our community, particularly in Centretown. So I want to believe that most people who came here to protest against COVID policies, they didn't want to harass people. But the problem was, the general feeling of chaos gave cover to people who have hate in their heart, who are targeting some of our neighbors. And what I hope comes out in the inquiry is some serious, deep thinking about how we as a country can disagree on policies, but can never let that level of hate and dehumanization surface again. Because I've seen it happen elsewhere in the world, and it never goes to a good place.
Mm-hmm. As you know, the actions of Ottawa police have come under huge scrutiny as a result of what took place during the convoy protest. Could more aggressive action on the part of Ottawa police, do you think that might have mitigated what we saw?
Well, Michael, let's begin with maybe it was a bad idea to chaperone 500 vehicles into parking spots all over the downtown of Ottawa. I mean, who at the Ottawa police, who at senior levels of security in this country believed it was appropriate to let 500 vehicles permanently park and camp in the downtown core? Who believed, after everything we heard from the convoy leaders, that these folks were going to leave after a few days? That is just not a credible argument. So I'm looking at the inquiry into the use of the Emergencies Act. I'm looking at former Chief Slowly's comments. I'm looking at all security officials' comments. I'm looking at what the convoy organizers are going to say about what they intended to do and how long they were prepared to stay. So it was an abject failure from a security standpoint to let people be chaperoned into the downtown. Any responsible owner-operator of a truck should have had their license and insurance policies pulled by the province of Ontario within a week of something like this. I guarantee you, Michael, if someone was protesting against climate change, if someone was protesting against any number of other subjects, any vehicles involved would have been moved within hours of it starting. But there was an asterisk to this movement. And I want to understand through this federal inquiry into the use of the Emergencies Act, why was a double standard applied to this protest? And how can we make sure in the future, when debate gets heated in this country, that we can continue to see each other and not dehumanize each other, not throw each other under the bus?
Can I ask you, though, to define what that asterisk is? You say there's an asterisk attached to this protest. What do you fear it is?
Well, I've never known, Michael, of an occasion in the past, and I've attended many climate action events, for example. I've never known of any climate action events that have snarled the downtown for weeks on end, that our security forces were involved in donating to. But we now know that some members of the Ottawa Police Service donated to this cause late into it when people had missed work, when people had been intimidated into the streets. We know that members of the Ottawa Police, and they've been brought up on internal charges, not only let it happen, but contributed to making it happen. So this is really, I think, a reckoning for us. We pay our municipal taxes as folks who live in cities to make sure that public safety is looked after, is guaranteed. And that did not happen in this instance. It took weeks for action to happen from any level of government. And I truly believe that if it was a protest over any other matter, this would have been solved in hours. For some reason, this was unworkable for our security expertise here. So I know what got us through, Michael, was citizens looking after each other. It was the legal injunction that stopped the honking that was going on at 80 decibels. It was the Battle of Billings Bridge, where people, including myself, peacefully blockaded convoy vehicles and told them they were not welcome in our downtown any longer. And then finally, the security establishment began to catch up to what citizens were demanding of our police forces. So my memory of, go ahead, Michael.
Sorry, and I'm quickly losing time, but I do want to ask you then, given all that you've just said, at the heart of this inquiry is whether or not it was proper to invoke the Emergencies Act, whether or not it was appropriate or an overreach. When you hear that question, what goes through your mind? Was it legitimate?
I lean to no. I lean to not suspending civil liberties. I lean to not having the kinds of extreme measures that the Emergency Act requires the state to do. I believe that if the province of Ontario, Michael, frankly, acted like the province of Quebec did, we would not have had trucks parked here for weeks on end. In Quebec, they threatened to pull licenses, they threatened to pull insurance policies, and the trucks rolled into Montreal and Quebec City and left. But in Ottawa, the province of Ontario, Premier Ford, did not use those powers. And I'm shocked at the fact that there's really, from my understanding, only one party, the Deputy Solicitor General from Ontario, participating in this inquiry, because frankly, Ontario has a lot of questions it needs to answer. Because this won't be the first time we have a major security event. There will be others. So how do we make sure we can protest vigorously if necessary, but also not dehumanize or harass neighbors who may have a different view?
Joel Harden, thank you for the time today.
It's my pleasure, Michael. Be well.